Hey guys, welcome to Bethel Online. My name is Jason. I'm one of the pastors here, and we're so glad you decided to make us a part of your weekend. No matter who you are, where you come from, we're so glad you're here. Our vision is to be a safe place for real people to encounter the real Jesus and experience real change. Our hope and our prayer is that no matter who you are or what you've been through, you know that you are loved and you are wanted here. We would love to get to know you better and help you connect with all that's going on. You can do this by going to our website at www.bethel.us or by downloading the Bethel app. You can find our app by searching Bethel Putco in your app store. Both online and in the app, you can fill out digital connection card. It only takes a minute and it'll help us know how to serve you better. Another way you can connect today is through giving. Your generosity at Bethel directly impacts God's mission to radically change people's lives in Putnam County and beyond. Through the ministries of Bethel and the many local and regional organizations we support, people are able to see the grace of God and how much He loves them. You can always give on our website at bethel.us/give or in the Bethel app. Thank you for partnering with us and making a difference. Well, thanks again for tuning in online today. Know that you are wanted and welcome here, and you are loved. I hope you all have a great day.
Good morning and welcome to Bethel Online. This week we are talking about bold commitment. Over the past 5 weeks, we have been in a series called Bold Belief. As Bethel, as a church, steps out in bold belief for our next 2 years. We're stepping out financially to support the continued ministry of Bethel in the community and stepping into building a new facility. And we today will be making a bold commitment as a congregation. If you can make it to our 9 o'clock or 10:30 a.m. services at Deer Meadow, today is going to be an incredible day as our people step forward with their commitment card and pledge their commitment financially to this Bold Belief initiative. I can't wait to see what God is going to do as we choose to be bold in our faith and bold in our future. In our culture today, many of us are quick to say what we are for or against. Social media has given a platform to everyone to give their opinion. I'm for this and I'm against this. As we listen to politicians speak, as we listen to people use their platform, people often talk about what they're for or against. They're against taxes or for this bill or for this policy and for a road being repaired or against the expenditure. People have strong opinions. You know, I would like to be known for what I'm for. I'm for people encountering Jesus. I'm for people winning in life. I'm for good things happening to people. I would want to be a part of a movement and a church that is about helping people encounter Jesus and experience changes in their life that help them win at the things that matter. I think most of you would agree that you're for those things. Most of us can look and say, well, a world where addicts get sober is a better world. A world where marriages are repaired rather than broken. A world where children receive the support that they need to grow up and be healthy adults is a good world. But it's one thing to be for something and it's another to commit yourself to it, because commitment takes something different than an opinion. Commitment takes effort and energy and it's willingness to stay for the long haul, to stay in the fight. Today I want to talk to you about a man who to me epitomizes commitment. Paul had been a Pharisee. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of what we know about Paul, he was actually killing people that attested to Jesus. He was killing people and present for the actual martyrs of the people who were declaring the resurrected Christ. He was zealous for the rules of God and zealous for the things of God, but at some point, he has an encounter with God, and it changes absolutely everything. He testifies to this in Acts chapter 22 as he stands trial before the people. He tells and recounts the story of how he had encountered Jesus and how he had found purpose in encountering Jesus and committed to the purpose of God. He begins by addressing the crowd or the trial by saying, brothers and fathers. He calls them to a connection. Listen now to my defense. And when they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. And then Paul said, I'm a Jew born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. He's saying, I am one of you. I come from the same background. I know the things that you know. And he says, I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison. Paul's saying, I used to be where you are, and I have made a decision to commit to the cause of Christ. He says, as the high priest and all the council can testify, I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus and went there to bring these people as prisoners of Jerusalem to be punished. I used to be with you. I used to be for what you are for. And he begins to tell a story of his encounter with Jesus. He says, about noon I came near Damascus, and suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting, he replied. You see, Paul encountered Jesus. He says, my companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that you have been assigned to do. So an encounter with Jesus leaves Paul with a purpose. He says, my companions led me by the hand into Damascus because of the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. Paul is lining up his defense with good witnesses to the events that happened to him that led him to change his perspective and to change his commitment. Rather than being committed against the things of Jesus, Paul began to join the way of Jesus. And he wasn't just for the way of Jesus. Paul was committed to the way of Jesus. It said he stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment, I was able to see him. Then he said, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all the people of what you have seen and heard. Paul in this gets his purpose from God. His encounter gives him his purpose, not just something to be for, but something to be committed to. That now Paul has been given this purpose to witness to all of the people, not just the Jewish people, but all of the people, the Jewish people and the Gentiles, as to what he had seen and heard. He says, and now what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. When I returned to Jerusalem, I was praying at the temple, Paul said, and I fell into a trance. And I saw the Lord speaking to me. Quick, he said, leave Jerusalem immediately because the people here will not accept your testimony about me. Paul is saying, I knew that you were not going to come along with me, but I had to go about what God had called me to. The calling of God is not something to merely agree with. The calling of God is something to be committed to. As a church, this day of commitment is, while there's a financial component of commitment, there's also a very personal, internal point of commitment. Many of us are for good principles. Many of us are for the commands of God. Many of us are for being kind and loving, but the reality is being for those things does not necessarily make us committed to it. That God calls us to deep commitment, and often to experience what God has for us, it begins with our commitment to it. Far too often, we quit before we commit. The reality is, it's one thing to put a ring on your finger on a nice day where everyone's in nice clothes. It's another to remember that in the middle of struggles and troubles. One of those is commitment. The other is being for something. Being connected versus being in relationship with. He said, Lord, I replied, these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there grieving, giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Paul's saying, I didn't feel like the right guy for the job. Then the Lord said to me, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. The crowd listened to Paul until he said this, and then they raised their voices and shouted, rid the earth of him, he's not fit to live. You see, the people who Paul was speaking with did not want the Gentiles to be included in the Messiah, but they had turned their back. As they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, the commander ordered that Paul be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. You see, Paul is in a spot here in which he could have very easily said, you know what, you're right, I'm going to go back in the direction you want me to go. But Paul knew the purpose of God for his life. He had committed to it, and there was no turning back. As they stretched him out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty? When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported, what are you going to do? He asked, this man is a Roman citizen. The commander went to Paul and asked, tell me, are you a Roman citizen? Paul said, yes, I am. Then the commander said, I had to pay a lot of money for my citizenship, but I was born a citizen, Paul replied. Those who were about to interrogate him withdrew immediately, and the commander himself was alarmed. They wanted no part of mistreating a Roman citizen. When he realized he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains, the commander wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews. So the next day, he released him and ordered the chief priests and all the members of the Sanhedrin to assemble. Then he brought Paul and had him stand before them. You see, Paul is in a moment in which he chooses sacrifice over convenience, commitment over quitting. Paul had been given a vision by God about his life that he was to share with the Gentiles. Interestingly enough, you will find that much of the New Testament, much of the scriptures that you and I use today as people who are Gentiles use and hear and have learned about Christ are a result of the writings of Paul. That the early church would take off in an incredible way. That for years he would be memorialized by basilicas and hospitals, and Paul would be remembered as an early father in the church. And yet, this wasn't the only time that Paul struggled and had to stay committed. This morning, I think it's worth all of us asking the question of our level of commitment to Jesus. Jesus wants our commitment. He is unapologetically asking for our commitment to his purposes in our life. We can see that 5 different times the Apostle Paul was whipped with brutal lashes, and he was whipped and beaten numerous times because he attested to the risen Christ. While he could have turned away, he remained committed as they beat him numerous times, as they pummeled him with stones, as he was shipwrecked, as he went to carry out the vision of God. He was shipwrecked 3 different times. He was left adrift at sea as he remained committed. He really wasn't in one place long. He was always going somewhere else on a journey. He was frequently in danger from rivers or the consequences of the places that he was, in danger from robbers. I can only imagine that there were days when Paul said, I'm tired. I'm tired and I want to go home, in the words of Forrest Gump. I'm just sure that Paul had days where he was tempted to turn around and say, you know what? Except the vision from God and the encounter from God had changed Paul. That encounter from Jesus and the grace shown to Paul despite his past fueled his commitment to carry to the world the news that had changed him. His own people wanted to destroy him. Even the churches that he started often would turn against him. He would experience dangers in the places that he went and dangers in the wilderness. Many dangers at sea and from false friends. I'm sure after some of his betrayals, Paul thought, I'm not sure I can love people anymore. I'm sure after long days of toil and work and setbacks that Paul may have felt like giving up, but there was this commitment to the purposes of God. He was left sleepless, hungry and thirsty, cold and exposed, filled with the pressure of all the churches that he had planted in the name of the resurrected Jesus. How on earth do you live that kind of commitment? As we step forward in commitment as a church, there will be challenges. As you individually step out in commitment and sacrificial commitment, you'll probably experience some challenges. As you step out and commit your life to Jesus, there will inevitably be opposition. What was it that sustained Paul's commitment? See, I think 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 17 and 18 say it very well, as Paul says this. After talking about all the ways that he had experienced challenges, Paul says, for our light and momentary troubles, those don't sound like light and momentary when we're right in them. But Paul had a godly perspective and a permanent perspective to the temporary nature of his struggles. He said, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. You see, Paul was not looking from an earthly perspective. He was looking at an eternal perspective. Paul saw that the gospel message of Jesus Christ to broken men carried great weight in comparison with the pain of this world. Paul saw that the earthly pain would one day go away, while the eternal difference that would be made as he shared the gospel would be forever. He saw that it was temporary affliction versus godly glory. Paul kept perspective that his purpose wasn't for earthly success, but eternal purpose. My friend, you were born for eternal purpose. May you commit today to not just be for something, but to be committed to it. I love you, Bethel, and I'm so excited to see what happens as we step into bold commitment. I love you, and have a great week.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Are you ready to take your next step? We would love to hear from you. You can send an email to hello@bethel.us. You can send us a message on Facebook, or you can let us know in the Bethel app. And speaking of the Bethel app, take a moment, if you haven't already, to go to your app store and search Bethel Putco to download our app. There's all kinds of great resources in the app. You can listen to messages, you can view the messages from Sunday morning, and you can also fill out a digital Connect card. You can do that today and each week to let us know that you're tuning in. You can also find some great information about our Bethel Kids Ministry and our Be the One student ministries. Also in the app, you can give. It's one of 3 ways you can give. with online giving at bethel.us/give, in our app, Bethel Putco, or through text. Hey, thanks again for joining us. We hope you have a great day and know that you are loved.